This made Dorian realize that his previous wish had become a reality. He understood how wrong and cruel he had been towards Sybil. He was harming others, which was why the portrait was becoming ugly and cruel. There was still time to remedy this. She could still become his wife. Dorian Gray was torn inside. He began to struggle. His hypocritical and selfish love would be influenced towards something more noble, becoming a purer emotion. And this portrait, the one the artist painted, would become Dorian Gray's lifelong guide. This portrait constantly recorded the path of his soul, leaving traces of both the good and the bad. So, Dorian Gray suddenly felt anxious. He planned to find Sybil, apologize, and marry her. But he then learned that Sybil had already died. She had committed suicide. Dorian Gray paced around the room, his face pale. He began to struggle internally, with one voice in his head saying, "I feel this is my responsibility." Another voice said, "She committed suicide. This unfortunate event prevented me from fulfilling my responsibilities. It's not my fault." Look at the conflict between good and evil, so real. Who doesn't have it inside them? At this moment, Dorian Gray was enduring pain within his contradictions. At this time, Lord Henry arrived and advised the young man, saying, "Sybil's death is just a romantic tragedy." "Henry," cried Dorian Gray, coming over and sitting beside him, "why is it that I cannot feel this tragedy as much as I want to? I don't think I am heartless. Do you?" Henry sneered. "It is an interesting question," said Lord Henry, who found an exquisite pleasure in playing on the lad's unconscious egotism. Henry said, "In the present case, what is it that has happened? Someone has killed herself for the love of you. I wish that I had ever had such an experience. It would have made me in love with love for the rest of my life. The people who have adored me, there have not been very many, but there have been some, have always insisted on living on, long after I had ceased to care for them, or they to care for me. They have become stout and tedious, and when I meet them, they go in at once for reminiscences. Look at Lord Henry, how selfish, sly, and cold he is. He has no real feelings for individuals. So, what does Henry say next? He says, 'Oh, the obvious consolation, taking someone else's admirer when one loses one's own, in a good society that always whitewashes a woman.' This is a very evil idea, but Henry successfully persuaded Dorian Gray. He said, 'Think about it. How different Sybil Vane must have been from all the women one meets. There is something to me quite beautiful about her death.' At this moment, Dorian Gray was still a bit conflicted. He said, 'I was terribly cruel to her. You forget that.' What did Henry say? 'Hard to say. I am afraid that women appreciate cruelty, downright cruelty, more than anything else. They have wonderfully primitive instincts. We have emancipated them, but they remain slaves looking for their masters all the same. They love being dominated. I am sure you were splendid. I have never seen you really and angry, but I can fancy how delightful you looked. Look at this. After reading the novel, if you feel anxious and someone tells you similar things in the future, you should know their true nature.